All right, so we're starting off with Miguel's image here. And you went to an open mall, it sounded like. So there were a lot of people around. And you photographed someone as they're working at the Skechers booth here selling shoes, right? And I often think this is a really good approach for photographing strangers because you've already made the identity of this person less about them as an individual and more about their environment and their workplace. I think like going to someone's place of work or photographing kids playing baseball and then the identity is kind of about baseball and people can be more comfortable with that. So this was smart. It sounds like you tried a couple different things, but then you ended up photographing this guy here. You're at ISO 320, 50 millimeters, f1.4 at 1/125th of a second. So all those settings look good. You have the Skechers pretty clear in the background, but only because it's reflected in what we're seeing here. So I think that allows us to know where we are. We can see some boxes or something in the background. You have a TV here, which is a little bit of a distraction, but I don't know how you could have avoided that except for maybe getting up higher or lower to change your angle of view. And then your subject, I'm guessing, has like indoor lighting on them. We see the light coming from above on his hair, and that's not the most flattering light. But then it looks like maybe he has some light coming in from the front, from like open area, and we can see some catch lights in his eye there, and that light is fairly pleasing on him. So photographing in an area where you don't have control of the light to be able to get decent lighting on your subject, I think it's great to see here. And then you're including the mask here, and I think that that speaks so much to where we are right now, right? So normally we want to see the subject's whole face, but this idea that not only are you working with someone that's identity is here solely caught up in the fact that he's working for this shop, we're also hiding a lot of his identity by that mask. So I think that works well, seeing that sticker on his shirt and then the plexiglass someone mentioned is on the side. I think all of that adds to this time, and it's important that that's part of what you're documenting. I think even photographing him through this plexiglass could be an interesting approach. I don't know if you did that with any of your images. It doesn't look like it. Looks like you have some images that are pretty overexposed. I don't know if those are the images that you used and you were able to pull back some of those highlights in post-production. The images where we're just seeing part of the Skechers, I don't think that works as well. It's like it's cropping right through his head. The TV becomes a distraction here. Here, having all of the shoes behind him, I think could work. Maybe having him at an angle, a different angle, so he's not really framed up behind this top of the door, maybe there. But overall, I think you picked the strongest image here, and I think your edits to it work well. We have this image by ZinZin, and we're at ISO 100, 36 millimeters, f18 at 1/60th of a second. So 1/60th of a second in general is fast enough to hand hold, but it looks like the dog has a little bit of movement on him. So just having a puppy is going to have more movement. So in this case, I'd probably adjust the settings some and have a wider aperture so you could let more light in with that aperture, and then you could have a faster shutter speed. I also think that would help in allowing the background to fall out of focus. We don't need to know all of what's going on back here, like seeing the building, seeing the edge, seeing the trees. We want to have the idea that is back there, but we don't need to see all of the detail of that. That's not telling us more of the story here. So I think opening up that aperture, shooting it at maybe a 4 would allow the background to fall out of focus, and you would have a plenty fast enough shutter speed for this image. Now, it sounds like you were in a tricky situation where the area you're living in, you're not allowed to like go outside and photograph people, but you are in your small area, your contained area. So I'm glad that you still got out there and you photographed a stranger for this. I think that's important. And just like the last person, Miguel's image had the Skechers as kind of the identity. This guy is probably more comfortable because he knows part of his identity here is about his puppy and not so much about him. So I think that can be very helpful. Watching your angle of view so that you're getting the best light on your subject is going to help. Like right now we have the light is really dark on his eyes because of his hat. So if you like, this is saying this is a different situation and you can guide him and whatnot. But if he was like laying down and looking up at his dog, that would give you the light on his eyes that we would want. So even though you're shooting it in the middle of the day and you have hard lighting, there's still ways you can adjust the way your subject is framed up in that lighting in order to get the best light on your subject. Bringing in a reflector would be ideal here, but that would mean that you'd have to be a little bit closer than you probably want to be with this stranger. And then here's the different images. This little dog is so cute. Yeah, even here having him move his hat backwards, I don't think that's as pleasing of an image because he looks like he's struggling with his dog, but that allows us to get some light on his eyes, which works better. And then this last image that we have for this small series is by Zixin, and you're at ISO 800, 65 millimeters of 6.3 at 1/60th of a second. And it sounds like where you are, there's a spike in COVID. So you wanted to photograph someone that you hadn't photographed before, but this is someone that's familiar to you and not a stranger. So I appreciate your honesty in that. And as you know, we're in a weird situation right now to be taking people photography. So I'm happy to work with you in these situations. And so you're photographing someone that you know well but haven't photographed often. Your settings that I just went over, those all look good. The background falling out of focus works really well in this. You can tell the subject's sharp. The hair is sharp on across the subject's face. You have nice, it looks like window light coming across the subject's face, giving nice dimension and highlights to one side of the face. And covering the eyes, to me, just viewing it before I read what you had written about it, makes me feel like this is someone familiar that you wanted to make feel more distant and feel more like a stranger. So it seemed like you were adding that narrative by the way you were posing your subject. But it sounds like it was just you kind of making her comfortable in front of the camera. She looks very comfortable here. It feels like a very natural image as far as her, not that she has her eyes covered, but the fact that she looks just not like she's like holding onto her hair tight or not like she has anything that's creating nervous energy. So I think this is a really beautiful image. Making it black and white was a smart decision. I think that abstracts it in a way that makes us look at it in a more like questioning way, wondering what's going on in this image. But her wearing glasses and the covering up her eyes, I think is just really beautiful in that image. And that is hands down the strongest image that you have here, right? The other images are very normal. She's in her space or in your space, and they're very normal, kind of having someone just pose for a portrait, but it doesn't feel like there's anything special there. But then when you cover her eyes and you're having that interaction, it feels like there's a lot of mystery, a lot that we want to find out, a lot of question in the image. And having her pull it all the way across, opposed to right here, it is much more interesting, much calmer feeling. This image, I think if you maybe cropped in closer, maybe like right at the bottom of her hands there, and had blurred out the background more, so maybe getting closer or using a longer lens and opening up that aperture could be really nice as well. I think that back of her face or back of her head and just the length of her hair and what that tells us about her is interesting.